Welcome back. It's good to be with you again. You know, living in the American West is interesting because of the role that it plays in the popular imagination and also because of its real importance to the history of art and photography. I mean, from the very beginning, both landscape painting and landscape photography of the American West were used to try to capture the vastness, the power, the untamed beauty of the American West. Among photographers, you know, Ansel Adams is considered a towering figure because he captured the beauty and the majesty of the American West with a real devotion to the technical exactitude of photography. I mean, he was famous, right, for shooting images in a way that everything in a vast landscape was in focus. And his use of tone was always very lush and inviting to the eye. But what if we do when we encounter landscape photography that doesn't adhere to the aesthetic conventions or the typical subject matter? What if the pictures are of construction sites, vacant lots, and new housing developments? What if parts of the image are out of focus and the use of tone is frankly kind of drab? Then what? I mean, do we just assume that we're looking at bad images? Or is something else going on? So let's look at a couple of images from Adams' collection, What Can We Believe Where? Photos of the American West. And I'm actually glad that he used that subtitle because it really helps set his work apart from the traditional landscapes of the American West. But we're just going to look at a couple photos, and these are ones I'm interested in because I think they make a particular suggestion, and that is that beauty has its limits. And that real art is actually pretty much always conceptual at some level. And it's the strengths of the concepts therein that are a source of the art's purpose and meaning. Now, this is where things get sticky, because saying this, I am well aware that I am in the position of disagreeing with the artist himself and many of his commentators. Adams does describe his work in terms of beauty, and in particular, he talks about having balance in the frame, having images that form a coherent whole. Anyway, I want to look at these because I think that they succeed in ways that are not directly related to beauty, and that's actually what I like about them. You know, these images are unassuming. There's nothing grand about them or the subject matter, which often includes industrial or economic processes occurring in the landscape. You know, consider that the indigenous people were long ago pushed onto reservations, the trees were cut down, the land sold. The groundwork was laid for the urbanization of the West, a process that started gaining momentum after World War II and that continues to this day. So we've got this image from Longmont, Colorado in 1975, and in the far distance you've got the power lines. Then you've got a street and some sidewalks in place that show where a development's going to be built. Then you've got the dirt road in the foreground with the tire tracks. And then in the middle of the frame, you have the mutilated body of this dead tree. All of this under a drab gray sky. So clearly this image isn't a celebration. It is a frank look at a particular type of economic expansion. This photo suggests that soon that last tree will be gone, the houses will be built, and the place will hum with suburban life. What's kind of cool is all of this is implied without the presence of people or equipment. He simply shows us the current state of the land itself at a moment that allows us to imagine what the land may have been like in the recent past, and certainly what it will be like in the near future. Now, photos like these suggest that despite all our ideas about thriving in tidy, well-groomed suburban communities, there are always going to be gaps. And these gaps aren't necessarily pretty. In some of these images, I would suggest that the trees appear, it's almost like they're characters in a story about being stuck in one of these uncomfortable spaces. I mean, imagine spending your entire existence between that fence on the right and the highway on the left. I mean, think about how many miles of American highways are defined by these ragged green strips where trash accumulates and a few rough trees eke out in existence. I mean, my own response to this photo is that I want to retreat. I want to be someplace quieter. And you know, there's a certain forward movement to this image. You can imagine stepping into that space, but I don't want to step in there because I know if I do, I'm going to step on a used diaper or a fast food container chucked from a passing car. So it seems like Adams' photographs often reframe the suburban landscape, either emphasizing derelict spaces or the collision between different types of space. This shot from 1974 in Denver is one that I really appreciate. His camera is positioned in the derelict space itself, looking back towards the lot, the walking man, and the building. And notice that these elements are all kind of out of focus. Part of the larger context of the image, but maybe not the main subject. What's in sharpest focus is along the bottom of the frame, the defeated grass and accumulated detritus. So the image actually calls attention to what we have understandably learned to ignore. And I want to say that I don't think this is an attractive or beautiful image. And it doesn't need to be because it's successful. The image illustrates the relationship between these adjacent spaces. I mean, it's almost a point of view shot from the perspective of the trash on the ground, looking back at where it came from and back at us who allow it to accumulate there. You know, earlier I mentioned the importance of the concepts within the work. And in his own words, Adams said that he was capturing a landscape of mistakes. And this idea allowed him to explore subject matter and types of imagery that others either overlooked or weren't interested in. And in so doing, he reminds us of the very real impact of ideas such as the American dream and its reliance on wasteful concepts such as everyone having their own green grass lawns, automobiles, and single-family homes. I mean, and really, we're dealing with the legacy of this kind of thinking right now in the West. I mean, it's really playing out on a daily basis. You may have heard that the Colorado River and the Great Salt Lake are running out of water, as are Lake Mead and Lake Powell. So we're really at the point where, like, the idea of glorifying the Western landscape and traditional notions of the American dream, you know, aren't of much help to us now. We need other ways of thinking and other ways of looking. And I think what's interesting about Adams' photos of the 70s is that looking back at them now, it feels like what he caught was the permanent state of American development. I mean, we are always going to have derelict spaces. We will never control garbage and waste on that kind of a micro level. Municipal governments are going to rarely seek to limit development. And if we have like any hope of addressing the political, cultural, and environmental challenges that we're living through in the American West, a really good place to start is with this kind of honest description of where we currently stand. And ultimately, if nothing else, what the work of Robert Adams gives us is a really good example of what that kind of honesty looks like.